It all started when I got an apartment in an old building from the 1940s, characterized by high ceilings, spacious rooms, and strong brick walls. The main drawback was that it was in urgent need of major repairs. Despite the fact that the apartment was in a deplorable condition, I did not lose heart and eagerly began the restoration. As they say, the main thing is that the wall was intact, and I was confident in my ability to solve the remaining problems myself. Interestingly, I discovered that my boss lived in the same building, albeit in a different entryway. This discovery came out of the blue. While taking out the trash one day, I ran into her in the yard. "James," she said in surprise. "Oh, Mrs. Brenda." I was just as surprised. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I live here now," I reply. "My aunt left me an apartment." "Oh, so we're neighbors now," she laughed. "Now you won't be able to loiter at work." After that, life fell into a routine. Work, house, renovations. Every now and then, I would run into her in the yard. A couple times, she even gave me a ride to work. Let me describe my boss. She's a tall, well-groomed woman of 55. Already a grandmother, but still capable of turning a man's head. Blonde, with long hair, always arranged in an intricate style. She has an impressive charisma. You may think she is the stereotypical bossy woman in a skirt, but the employees of our small firm loved and respected her. They appreciated her for her loyalty and humanity, even though she was not immune to mistakes. I never saw her as anything but my boss. After all, she was old enough for me to give her my male attention. But then something unexpected happened. We had just celebrated the completion of a lucrative contract, and we each received a nice bonus on top of our salaries. Naturally, we celebrated in style and, as always, overdid it. Cognac, whiskey, and many other drinks poured down the river. There was wild dancing, and overall, it was a fantastic time. By the end of the night, the semi-conscious bodies of my colleagues were loaded into cars and sent home, giving them a couple of days off to cure their hangovers. I had the most important task of all, getting Mrs. Brenda home safely, since we lived in the same building. She almost made it to the cab on her own, with only a little help from me holding her by the waist. I carefully placed her in the back seat, where she immediately fell asleep, and I got in the front seat to give the driver my address. When we pulled up to our house, she woke up and we started looking for her apartment key. Apparently, she had left it at the office. There was nothing to do, so I decided to take her to my apartment. I realized it was a bit indecent, but there was no other way. I took her by the waist and led her upstairs. As we walked, the physical intimacy stirred something in me, especially since I hadn't been with anyone in a while. Thoughts began to run through my head. What if Miss Brenda and I had a little fun together? I mean, nothing bad could come of that, right? As we walked, my thoughts intensified, and my arms began to embrace her more and more tenderly. Finally, we reached my apartment, and as soon as I opened the door, Miss Brenda pulled me to her and kissed me. We didn't even make it to the bed. It all happened right in the hallway. After catching our breath, we got up and moved to the bedroom where we fell asleep. The next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, Mrs. Brenda brought me coffee in bed. "James, my stud, after last night, you're going to have to marry me," she said with a playful smirk. I almost choked on my coffee when she laughed. "Just kidding, honey," she said, "but we'll be repeating last night a lot more often from now on." She winked at me and playfully jumped on the bed.